And that's why we have question time. Both opposition and government MPs can submit questions to the Prime Minister or Cabinet Ministers for details on, for example, how a contract was awarded or expenditure to purchase tablets for schools. So if you ever have a question for a government minister, try asking through your MP. After all, that's why they're your political representatives. They should represent your questions and concerns to the government. Tool number 3, parliamentary debates. When cabinet ministers present the government's proposals for new policies, laws, and programs, parliamentary debates allow both opposition and government MPs to air concerns, make suggestions, and endorse proposals. If you ever watch those debates, you know they can get a little fiery. But the debate is important as it informs decisions and continues until a vote is taken on the way forward. Then we have tool number 4, parliamentary committees. The general sittings of Parliament are not always sufficient for detailed examination of government's work, so oversight committees are formed using government and opposition members to do just that. Some committees like the PAC and the PAAC are in place for an entire parliamentary term. Their job is to monitor the use of public funds to find ways to increase value and efficiency while reducing waste and corruption. Cabinet and state ministers are not appointed to oversight committees since they are a part of the government. Some committees are formed when a need arises. For example, joint select committees are formed to review draft policies or legislation or to probe other matters of serious national importance. Members of these committees are both opposition and government MPs and senators, and these committees will usually invite citizens to share their opinions, concerns, and recommendations. So there you have it, 4 accountability tools of Parliament that are used to make sure government run right. Visit jampja.org to find contact information for your MP. Invite them to meet with the community so they can better represent your issues and concerns in Parliament and keep government accountable. Get involved and let's make Jamaica land we love, Jamaica land we own, and Jamaica land we run well. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union and the Inter-American Development Bank in partnership with the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica.
The national tourism debates are on, and PBCJ is the place to watch them. See students from schools all across the island match wits and tackle complex issues affecting our nation. Watch as future leaders and thinkers solve problems with innovative arguments. Tune in on Mondays and Thursdays at 5 p.m. with a repeat on Saturdays from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. Watch the national tourism debates on PBCJ, the People's Station.
We are in a race against time, to reverse the effects of climate change by one simple action which has positive and enduring effects. That's right, plant a tree, leave a lasting legacy. Join the My Tree Legacy promotion by planting a tree at your alma mater and share your work with us. Every tree counts. Plant a tree today and keep climate change away.
The National Family Planning Board now presents a parenting tip from Jim Valvano. My father gave me the greatest gift anyone could give another person. He believed in me.
Are you non-partisan, able to read and write well, and ready to serve your country? The Electoral Office of Jamaica is recruiting persons like you to become Election Day workers. Apply at the nearest EOJ constituency office without delay. Bring a valid ID and TRN. Election Day workers will be trained and compensated. Together, we can ensure free and fair elections.
Do your part to prevent mosquito breeding. Mosquitoes will breed in any container that holds water.
Tightly cover water storage containers such as drums, barrels, buckets, and tanks. If this cannot be done, pour cooking oil on the water surface. Punch holes in all tins, plastics, and beverage boxes to prevent the collection of water before disposal. Cover all tires or fill with dirt to prevent water collection. Scrub all vases once per week to remove mosquito eggs. Use mosquito repellents to protect yourself from mosquito bites. Dispose of garbage properly by placing in plastic bags and securing properly to prevent water collection.
A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Once you come to our domestic violence center, you will be greeted with a pleasant face, because what we do, we are about caring for persons, and we're also about empathizing with persons. So when you come, you have an environment that you are comfortable in, and that you'll be free to express yourselves and to seek the intervention that you desire, and we provide that avenue for you to come. It's a safe haven for you. Once you are with us in our center, you are protected. And so you can rest assured that we will act on your behalf and act in your best interest.
The center, it's a place, it's an environment where you can be comfortable. You can, when you come here, you're supposed to feel relaxed. So whatever the issue is, we're not saying that we are miracle workers, but what we're saying is that we're persons who are open to listening to you, accommodating you. We believe in confidentiality, and therefore whatever is said here is kept here.
Life is about balance, about give and take. And forests give us so much. They purify our water. They clean our air. They fight climate change by capturing carbon. They give us food, life-saving medicines, and they improve our well-being. But our forests are vulnerable. They are endangered by fires, pests, droughts, and other threats. That is why we need to look after them. We need to give, not only take. Healthy forests for healthy people.
Once upon a time in a Caribbean island known for its rich culture and natural beauty, lived a group of people who were buried in piles and piles and more piles of paper. Papers spanning back to the start of time. Then came a bright idea, harnessing technology to work smarter and not harder. The government of Jamaica is improving its operations to serve citizens better. Many services are now available online, and there's more to come. The government of Jamaica, building a better public sector for all.
Are you an entrepreneur producing an excellent Jamaican product or service? Did you know you can earn hard currency and more significant returns by exporting? Contact the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce to help propel your business along the export lane.
Everything you can produce, the Jamaicans overseas want it. We're not going to get rich by just bringing down the debt. We're going to get rich by exporting a lot more. So grow exports, create job opportunities, drive economic growth through exports to make Jamaica a richer and much more prosperous country.
Dengue is ordinarily a mild disease. Persons may get a fever, headache, joint and muscle pains. The illness is often resolved through rest and adequate hydration along with paracetamol to treat the accompanying fever. However, on occasions the illness can progress to severe dengue, which can result in organ failure, bleeding and severe fluid depletion that can lead to shock and even death. Therefore, it is important for persons who are experiencing fever, vomiting, severe abdominal pain, bleeding under the skin, feeling very weak, or getting confused to seek immediate attention. Let us work together to protect ourselves against dengue.
You'll always remember that day you became a parent. That day, you made yourself a promise to provide for them, to protect them, laugh with them, watch them learn, and let them grow. That day you realized your biggest challenge lies in bringing them up in a world full of choices. That day you knew they would grow up fast, and the innocence you cherish wouldn't last. That day you made up your mind that no matter how things change, you would always take the time to give them parental guidance. That day is today.
Remember, parental controls are available for all devices. A reminder from the Broadcasting Commission.
What if I told you that you own thousands of acres of land, more than 100 companies with over 100,000 employees and billions in the bank? Well, I have news for you. You do. Jamaica belongs to you, and you need expert protection to safeguard those assets for your future, your children, and your children's children. And you already have it. A key protector is our Auditor General, whose role is outlined by the biggest, baddest law in all the land, the Constitution. The Auditor General's main job is to examine the financial reports of all public entities to ensure that they are accurate and that public funds are used appropriately and effectively to deliver public goods and services without waste, theft, and mismanagement. Here's how it's done. A team of highly trained auditors reviews and verifies that the right amount of money is spent on only what's approved in the national budget and in accordance with the laws and policies that protect public resources. Now, the right amount of money can be spent on the right things and Jamaicans still no benefit. So the Auditor General assesses the outcome for programs and projects as well. Audit reports will also contain recommendations to improve the operations of the audited entity, and the findings are submitted to the Parliament's Public Accounts Committee, the PAC. Every year, an annual report is submitted by December 31. Both government and opposition MPs serve on the PAC, and they summon public entity managers to answer questions so that they and the public, the real owners, yes, you, can understand what went wrong and how to prevent a recurrence. What are some things that can and do go wrong? Cost and time overruns, missing financial reports, unreported losses, unauthorized spending, unsupported payments, unlawful contracting, undisclosed conflict of interest, and more. Though the AG identifies the abuse of laws and policies, the law does not empower that office to penalize or sanction, but it does empower the Financial Secretary in the Ministry of Finance. It is also the duty of other anti-corruption and law enforcement bodies to grab the button and investigate to ensure penalties are applied when appropriate. But the AG alone can't watch all. So when things don't look straight, the Minister of Finance, members of Parliament, Cabinet, public servants, and importantly, you must blow the whistle and the AG will look deeper. So this is where you come in, with 4 things you can do to strengthen those who are fighting to protect our future. Tune into PBCJ on Tuesdays for the PAC and mind your business, Jamaica. It's our belongings, but we have to move like we understand that. And next time you hear a news report about the AG, you just left it up to the media. Visit the AG's website at www.auditorgeneral.gov.jm and check out the findings yourself. Then, keep track of how government has fixed the issue or not at www.jampja.org's accountometer. And if you're not happy with what you see, it's your job to contact your employees. It's easy when you visit the MP tracker on jampja.org. This is how we can do our part to make Jamaica land we own, Jamaica land we love, and Jamaica land we run well. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter portal, funded by the European Union and UK Aid.
You know, dog a sweat, but long hair cover it. But not everybody need to know when you are going through your hard times, You can dress up, have fun, and carry on with life even though all is not well in your life. You see me here? Dog a sweat, but long hair cover it.
just meds it.
Instead of hurting and fighting each other.
Let's help each other.
We don't need to fight.
We're all here to learn.
Your classmate could be a future lawyer or minister.
Do you know that your classmate or your schoolmate could be a future prime minister?
So here what? Just make daddy proud. Not have me a worry.
Don't fight or lash out. Violence is never the answer.
Before you pick up a stone,
why not pick up your book?
And just meds it.
We all have our part to play.
Let's end violence.
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 We must end violence in schools now.
Are you non-partisan, able to read and write well, and ready to serve your country? The Electoral Office of Jamaica is recruiting persons like you to become Election Day workers. Apply at the nearest EOJ constituency office without delay. Bring a valid ID and TRN. Election Day workers will be trained and compensated. Together, we can ensure free and fair elections.
This is the Aedes aegypti mosquito that spreads the Zika, chikungunya, and dengue viruses. Search for its breeding sites and destroy them. This is the Aedes aegypti mosquito that spreads the Zika, chikungunya, and dengue viruses. Protect yourself from the bite of this mosquito.
A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Nutritious food, succulent dishes, superior workmanship, and excellent service. Jamaica is on the go. Let's grow what we eat and eat what we grow. Let's harness the indomitable spirit of our most valued resource, our people. Let's support our local businesses. After all, buying Jamaican means building Jamaica.
Original.
Welcome to PBCJ's live coverage of the Senate. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. Before we begin, did you know that the Cabinet is the center of the government? Cabinet initiates government policies and programs and is responsible for the general direction and control of the government. The Cabinet must consist of the Prime Minister and not less than 11 other ministers. Not more than 4 ministers must be appointed from the Senate, and they may have portfolio responsibilities. The other Cabinet ministers are appointed from the House of Representatives. Cabinet ministers may be assisted by ministers of state and parliamentary secretaries. Each minister conducts the ordinary business of his ministry without referring to any other minister. However, important matters, especially those which may become the subject of discussion in Parliament, are brought before the Cabinet for discussion and decision. In today's session, the State of the Nation debate continues with contribution from the Senator Matthew Samuda. It should be noted that the agenda can be adjusted, with items being added, removed, or replaced. If you are planning to attend a session, here are some rules to keep in mind. No visitor shall create any act of disorder within the precincts of the House. No visitor shall be admitted to the House without first obtaining an admission card from the office of the clerk. Visitors who remain within the precincts of the House during a suspension of the session are asked to keep silent. Now over to the proceedings.
And it is hoped that we will be able not only to reproduce the work of 2023, but will move to increase the efficiency of this Senate during the year 2024. I take the opportunity to wish all members of the Senate all the best for the new year. Health and safety really are the priorities, and of course, prosperity for those who seek it. And it is extended to all the members of the staff of the Parliament, the security, orderlies, etc. Members may note that to the front of the chamber at the clerk's desk, you will notice that Ms. Colleen Lowe is acting as a clerk and will be acting as a clerk for, I think, at least another month. And we have Ms. Shanice Brandon. Please identify yourself, Ms. Brandon, who is acting as
and those persons joining us here today, all the very best for a happy, productive, peaceful, and prosperous New Year. I want to just reflect on the blessings that we have been granted in 2023, including the strength to take us through the many challenges which confronted us. We did have a productive year in this chamber, and it is anticipated that we will have an even more productive one in the year coming forward. I wanted to make note, Mr. President, of the significant work that has been done by the Standing Orders Committee under your leadership. It was very good that you shared some of this information with the public over the recess so that people could understand more of what the unseen work of this chamber is, as well as what they would see on Fridays after PBCJ starts to cover. I wish to note as well, Mr. President, with your leave, that among the important matters dealt with last year was the Domestic Violence Act, the amendments to the Domestic Violence Act, and our appointment of members to the Domestic Violence Act Review Joint Select Committee. Minister Grange announced in that other place on Tuesday that the act will take effect on Monday, January 22nd. So we, as a chamber, take note of that as well, and state how very much we look forward to being a part of the process of review and repeal of the entire framework that deals with domestic violence. It is
Clearly, one of the greatest contributors to murders, that is intimate partner violence and violence between persons who know each other, and that is intimate partner and interpersonal. And that is therefore has become even more important for us to deal with as a society. So I just want to note, Mr. President, the importance of that last step we took as we entered the Christmas recess, as it has in fact had benefited from work over this period. And on that brief note, Mr. President, again, to wish everyone who is a part of this incredibly important institution of our democracy, I wish the very best on behalf of the government side, and look forward to our continued collaborative approach and to the contributions of colleagues on both sides to the important debates that await us. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Dr. Morris?
I sit in this chair, I would want to, on behalf of the members of the opposition, to join in wishing all the members of staff, or colleagues, senators, you as president, and all of Jamaica all the best for 2024, and wish for us as a country a really peaceful, progressive, prosperous, and productive 2024. I want to join in, Mr. President, with some things that the leader of government business has said in terms of the productivity of the Senate, because we have to make sure that, you know, we present to Jamaica and review as many of the legislation as possible to advance the development of our country. But also I want to join with her in commending you and that release that was sent out over the holidays, clarifying or outlining some of the things that we have been doing in the Standing Orders Committee that I fully support and endorse, because it is tremendous work that has been done by the committee over the past couple of months. And as I've said to you, Mr. President, before, that I believe we need to carry at least an interim report to the Senate just to outline that plethora of reviews or modifications that have been proposed for the standing orders of the Senate. And I look forward to the animated discussions. I look forward to cooperating and supporting wherever we can in terms of legislation. And you know, Mr. President, where we believe that we need to be strident in terms of our position, we are going to be strident. But we look forward to working with the government for the advancement and development of this great island of ours, Jamaica. May it please you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. And it would be remiss of me also not to just indicate that we welcome the return of Senator Charles Sinclair, who was out with a broken leg. So anybody who wishes to make a clarification concerning the actual event can direct their inquiries to him. And of course, I ask that the Senate recognize Senator Janice Allen and allow her to join us virtually. I know that Senator Allen had a recent health issue, but she's obviously back in full mettle. So welcome back and Happy New Year to you too, Senator Allen.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you.
You lose a little work already, Senator Morris. Statements by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the Senate are the following. Reports on the appropriation accounts, head 0500, recurrent Auditor General's Department for the year 2021, 2022, and 2022-2023. We also have the Auditor General's Department Certified Appropriation Accounts, head 15000A, from the Office of the Prime Minister for the year 2018-2019, head 19,000 from the Minister of Economic Growth and Job Creation for the year 2019-2020, head 217 from the Minister of Finance and the Public Service, public debt servicing, debt amortization for the year 2019-2020, head 256 from the Tax Administration Jamaica for the year 2021-2022, the Planning Institute of Jamaica publication on Jamaica Survey of Living Conditions 2021, the annual report of the Jamaica Tourist Board for the financial year 2020-2021, annual report of the Office of the Public Defender for the years 2019, 2020, and 2021. Annual report of the Auditor General's Department for the financial year 2022-2023. Annual report and audited financial statements of the General Legal Counsel for the financial year 2022-2023 and its related minister paper numbered 01 of 2024. Minister paper numbers 02 and 03 of 2024 entitled Certified Appropriation Accounts, Head 0500 Recurrent, Auditor General's Department for the financial years 2021-2022 and 2022-2023 respectively. Finally, we have a report of the Integrity Commission Oversight Committee on its deliberations on the Integrity Commission's reports of investigations into concerns that employees of the Kingston and St. Andrew Metropolitan Corporation failed to submit their statutory declarations to the Commission for the years 2019, 2020, and 2021. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam. Bills brought from the Honorable House of Representatives. Petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally, questions and answers to questions, motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to the sitting of the Senate, motions for leave to introduce bills, the presentation of bills without the leave of the Senate first obtained. Public Business Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, it is intended today to continue with the State of the Nation debate and to do so with the sole contribution of Senator the Honorable Matthew Samuda, who holds the portfolios of water, climate change, and the environment, and seems to, however, do quite a bit more than that in his pursuit of Jamaica's national development. We very much look forward to his presentation, sir, and thank you for granting us leave to proceed.
Thank you very much. Just before Minister Samuda, a number of persons have accompanied the Minister or are in attendance of the Parliament from the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, and I welcome you to the Parliament and specifically the Senate, and hope that you will enjoy your stay with us today. Thank you very much. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President. President, before I dive into the substance of the presentation, I realize that the projector behind us is not quite working, so it will be difficult for some of the tables for the opposition to follow, but I will circulate separately from the presentation.
But this is not something that is new, you know, because it has been a recurring problem. So, Madam Clerk, I'm going to ask that you deal with this issue. And Senator Samuda.
Yes, sir.
Just 1 minute. Senator Gale, just activate your mic for me, please. It's not working. So we have noted that, please, Madam. So, Mr. Brown, the projector, there is no reason why it should be out. And that's Senator Gale's, those two microphones are not working. Thank you. I'm sorry, Senator Samuda.
No problem, Mr. President, and also, though she stepped out acknowledging that I was a little quick out of in the start of the race this morning and jumped ahead of the leader, so apologizing for that as we get started. Mr. President, for me, this is the 8th time that God has blessed me with the opportunity to contribute to the State of the Nation debate. Mr. President, interestingly, this is likely to be my second to last, or possibly last such contribution. It is a matter of public record that I intend to offer myself and win during as I enter representational politics in the beautiful parish of St. Anne. Mr. President, politics and public life is challenging. For me, it is made possible with the love and support from my wife, Natalie, and indeed my family. My wife, Natalie, and indeed my family. I hope the applause will continue. I love them dearly and thank them for being my everything. Mr. President, none of us own our success. It is because of the Almighty. He has blessed me to work with several patriotic, productive, committed Jamaicans, several of whom are here today. I've also had the opportunity in the Senate, Mr. President, to work with yourself, Senate Leader Minister Johnson-Smith, and Whip Senator Gale. The government caucus is a unified force that I am proud to be a part of. I also enjoyed the opportunity and have enjoyed and continue to enjoy to work with colleagues on the opposition benches. Mr. President, I pause to also acknowledge the parliamentary staff who give yeoman service to this nation. Mr. President, the team at the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, it's an honor to work with them. Led by the newly minted Permanent Secretary, watching online, P.S. Arlene Williams, her CTDs, I see CTD Guthrie here with us, indeed all directors, all staff, ancillary workers, and of course my own office team. We continue to make unprecedented strides as we contribute to Project Jamaica. I'm also proud to work with thousands of Jamaica at the agencies for which I have oversight, in the portfolios of water, environment, and climate change. I thank them for their tireless efforts to build Jamaica. Mr. President, though still young, my political journey has included service through Generation 2000, various Jamaica Labour Party committees, chairmanship of the Mona Division, overlapping with appointments to the Senate and indeed to the Cabinet of Jamaica. And that service has led to a new phase of my journey, with me offering myself to the warm people of Northeast St. Anne to be their MP. Mr. President, though I have acknowledged you several times previous, I again thank you for your guidance and tutelage. Mr. President, I also pause to acknowledge the Most Honorable Prime Minister Andrew Holness for the opportunity to serve not just in the Senate, but indeed in the Cabinet of Jamaica. Mr. President, one never truly knows what to expect when entering the political arena. I am, however, happy to report that my time thus far in getting to know the people of Northeast St. Anne has been an absolute joy, and I look forward to working with them closely as we ensure that they enjoy the peace, productivity, and prosperity that Project Jamaica promises. I thank my councillors, my executive, the management teams, indeed the office staff in the constituency and all the workers and every single constituent. I thank current Member of Parliament, Minister Marsha Smith, for her stewardship. I also pause here, President, to thank the late, great Shahini Robinson and indeed Tyrone Robinson for their legendary service to the people of Northeast St. Ann. Mr. President, there will be ample time in that other place in the term to come to discuss my plans for my constituency to be. However, the matter before us today is my view on the state of our nation. Mr. President, the format of all of my contributions to this debate over the years has been consistent. My theme this year is growing Jamaica sustainably. Mr. President, in assessing the state of the nation, colleagues have highlighted significant improvements in our country in several areas, including the economy, the standard of living, indeed health and education. I shan't relitigate all points put forward by colleagues before. I shall, however, articulate the role of the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, and indeed my specific portfolios in helping Jamaica to achieve the peace and productivity that it craves and that it deserves. Mr. President, climate resilience, peace, and productivity are interconnected in a complex web. Climate resilience involves the ability of communities to adapt and recover from the impacts of climate change. When communities are related, or rather resilient, to climate-related challenges, it reduces the potential for resource conflicts triggered by environmental stress. Peace is crucial for stability and development. Climate-related challenges such as extreme weather events or resource scarcity can exacerbate existing tensions and contribute to conflicts, as we would have seen in last year's drought between some communities. Conversely, promoting climate resilience can enhance peace by addressing environmental stressors and promoting sustainable resource management, Mr. President. Productivity in agriculture and indeed other sectors rely on stable conditions. Climate resilience measures contribute to maintaining stable environments for economic activity, reducing disruption caused by climate-related events. This, in turn, supports sustained productivity and economic growth. Mr. President, fostering climate resilience helps prevent conflicts triggered by environmental issues, contributing to peace and provides a stable foundation for sustained productivity and development. Mr. President, I suspect the leader of opposition business in the Senate, not yourself today, Donna, but you know who we mean, and indeed the spokesman on everything, it seems may have accepted the above and also recalled my contribution in crafting his contribution, my contribution last year in crafting his contribution to the State of the Nation debate. Mr. President, colleagues will recall that last year I posited the following. We are either leaders or we are not. We are either advocates for sustainability or we are not. We are either climate change warriors or we are not. We are either defenders of the right of Jamaicans to have access to potable water or we are not. Mr. President, the only difference in my usual approach to the State of the Nation debate between last year and this year is that I'm duty-bound to respond to some of the false assertions made by the Shadow Minister of Everything, especially as it relates to matters of national security and the environment. Mr. President, national security by any name is the most challenging of portfolios in Jamaica. This Jamaica land we love benefits and suffers from its geographic location. We are in the most violent region in the world as evidenced by the global murder data. We are in the geographic center of shipping routes for both guns and drugs, and the largest markets for both are all around us. To my mind, Mr. President, those factors, along with the general liberal outlook on justice in Jamaica, has caused a significant rise in gang-fueled violent crime since the 1990s. The country, though it has made significant strides in addressing this monster, has not yet returned to peace. Mr. President, the Shadow Minister on Everything has been using the word revisionist a lot recently. I caution him to stop attacking the public servants and indeed national institutions. The attack on the Jamaica Constabulary Force for quantifying and documenting incidents of crime in the exact way it was done and tracked under his tenure is unbecoming and vulgar. The men and women of the JCF should take note. Mr. President, I remind colleagues that I started this response, though it may be labeled a rebuke, by acknowledging the difficulty associated with the national security portfolio. However, it is the shadow spokesman on everything that would love to revise history. His tenure, Mr. President, was not a success. He attacks the statistics because they do not show a Jamaica that was safer under his tenure. Beyond that, where one uses the LAPOP victimization surveys or the Don Anderson surveys of late 2015 and early 2016, he would love his colleagues, because certainly we haven't forgotten, to forget that a part of the reason that they sit on that side is because not just the appallingly high unemployment and poverty rates of 14% and 21% respectively in 2015, but it was their management of the health sector and indeed, yes, the national security portfolio while they're over there. Mr. President, just to remind the nation that peace is our aim, our goal, our ambition, and the focus of our efforts. In moving on from this subject, I feel it imperative to remind colleagues and the nation of the following. Facts have no friends. Total reported crime, along with serious and violent crimes last year, declined by 10% and 8% respectively, relative to the previous year, and was at the lowest level, Mr. President, in 21 years. A more peaceful Jamaica, Mr. President. The most egregious crime outside of murder, Mr. President, to my mind, is rape. And one incident is far too many. However, since 2015, Mr. President, we have experienced a 35% decline in rapes in Jamaica. A less traumatized Jamaica, Mr. President. Acquisitory crime, Mr. President, meaning robbery and break-ins, declined by 14% when compared by the previous year. But, Mr. President, in 2015, Jamaicans experienced 3,731 incidents of robbery and break-ins. In 2023, Jamaicans experienced 1,647 incidents of such robbery and break-ins. Now, Senator Crawford is not here to help me with the maths, but my rough estimate was that reflects a 55% decline in acquisitory crimes since Senator Bunting's time there, Mr. President. A safer Jamaica, Mr. President. Now, the murder rate is unacceptable. No one is making or can make light of that. However, this administration is making the investments, the legislative changes necessary to fight the transnational gangs which maim and murder our people. I encourage the opposition to continue to support our legislative agenda and not cling to a liberal, unrealistic view of the threats this nation faces. Through our investments, Mr. President, our national resolve, and indeed by the grace of the Almighty, we will defeat the gangs and bring down murders, Mr. President. Mr. President, curiously, the Shadow Minister of Everything also delved into the matter of environment. And no doubt, as I update the nation on Meg JC's stewardship of the environment, more falsehoods and misinformation will fall away. Sustainability and resilience. Mr. President, to grow Jamaica sustainably, we require peace and productivity. To achieve peace and productivity, we require a healthy environment and resilience in facing the triple planetary crisis, as dubbed by the UN Environmental Programme. This triple planetary crisis threat refers to biodiversity loss, pollution with a heavy focus on plastic, and climate change. Mr. President, biodiversity loss can only be prevented by protecting ecosystems and habitats. Your government has significantly increased the percentage of the island's terrestrial, marine, and coastal environments declared as protected areas under the law since 2020. Mr. President, 25% of Jamaica's terrestrial landmass is now protected, and just under 15% of Jamaica's EEZ, in a sense our marine environment, is also now protected, both under the NRCA Act. Mr. President, Jamaica has long been a member of what is called the High Ambition Coalition. seeking to achieve 30% protection of terrestrial land and marine environment by 2030. In fact, we Jamaicans should be proud of the role played in getting the rest of the globe to agree to this position in December 2022 under the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, commonly referred to as the 30 by 30 target, which aims to conserve 30%, as mentioned, by 2030. And I pause and acknowledge CTD Gillian Guthrie for her significant work for Jamaica globally on the matter of biodiversity protection. But, Mr. President, this government likes to overachieve. Mr. President, we have revised our targets that we will complete the protection of 30% of our terrestrial landmass by 2025, a full 5 years ahead of the 2030 target that we've agreed to in the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Agreement. But how did we get to 25%? And colleagues should remember recent announcements of protection under the NRCA Act and declarations. We should recall the declaration of the Cockpit Country Protected Area some 3 years ago. We should recall the declarations last year of the Pedro Keys and surrounding waters as the country's most recent protected area. But certainly, as I know Senator Hill will recall, we should remember the declaration of the Black River and Morass area the year before. We should also recall that in March of last year, during the budget presentation of the Prime Minister, we declared 15 new ecologically sensitive areas, including places like Palisados to facilitate the management of the restoration of our mangrove population in that space, and places like Great Bay in St. Elizabeth, and indeed the hills in St. Anne above Duns River. Mr. President, in the financial year 2023-24, the government commenced the preparation of a new protected areas policy for Jamaica, which will replace the 1997 policy. Thereafter, the government will pursue the promulgation of long overdue omnibus protected areas legislation that will govern over 350 declared protected areas in the country, including fish sanctuaries, national and marine parks, and cultural and heritage sites. Mr. President, in strengthening the legislative framework governing protected areas, the government promulgated new protected areas regulations under the Natural Resources Conservation Authority Act in 2023-2024. Mr. President, I am proud to hold these gazetted regulations up this morning as they have just come from the printed office, Mr. President. These regulations, as the law allows, have been passed by the board of the NRCA, or approved rather by the board of the NRCA. Hot off the press. Mr. President, work on the National Land Use Land Cover Assessment, which started in 2023, is more than 84% complete and is scheduled to be finalized before the end of the financial year. This major undertaking, which utilizes high-resolution satellite imagery, acquired in 23, is designed to support the country's planning and development processes, not the Google Earth images presented by Senator Bunting. This major undertaking utilizes high-resolution satellite imagery acquired in 2023. It is designed to support the country's planning and development processes, as the information will not only advise on gains and losses with respect to forest cover, but will also provide invaluable information on land use and land cover to inform all planning activities. Mr. President, it is anticipated that once this work is complete, it will confirm the results of a small-scale land use assessment activity using dated national data obtained from the recently concluded RED Plus capacity project of 2018 to 2022. That preliminary assessment provided indicative information that approximately 52% forest vegetation cover, which would be a notable increase over the 2013 figure of 40%. But you didn't hear there was an increase in forest cover during that last presentation. Quite interesting. While current trends strongly suggest that the regeneration of forests on formerly mined out areas, inactive or agricultural lands, has supported this net gain of forest when compared to losses, The agency anticipates, being the Forestry Department, that the completion of deeper analysis of the contributing factors through the ongoing land use land cover assessment will provide better and deeper insight to inform the growth. See if it will oblige me. No such luck. Okay, no, it's working like the opposition, unfortunately, that's why it's on your side. But the attempt, well, my side has a graphic. So, Mr. President, the intention was to show the tree cover in off-reserve areas and show the growth coming from the Red Plus project. Mr. President, I was not here when the Shadow Minister and everything made his contribution at the last sitting of the Senate, nor was I sufficiently motivated to watch it on YouTube. But I assume when he claimed there was mining in the cockpit country, at that point a point of order was taken because it was a lie and it was withdrawn. I assume. I haven't checked the Hansard yet. I further assume that when he completed his presentation, Senator Fraser-Binns pulled him one side and suggested to him that the use of Google Earth was not sufficient and that he consult the Red Plus data, which she's aware of, that showed the increase in forest cover and the restoration of mined-out lands. Mr. President, I'm sure she did, to save him from himself. And I'm sure, was he here, he would have come and withdrawn the statements about the forest cover and indeed the cockpit country, as they are incorrect, Mr. President. I'm sure that would have happened. But, Mr. President, Senator Bunting's newfound interest in environmental protection is welcomed. We are recruiting advocates. It is proof, Mr. President, that even someone who sat in a cabinet that approved exploratory mining licenses of lands within the cockpit country, in fact, a cowardly cabinet that did not accept the recommendations of NEPA and Forestry Department for the declaration of the cockpit country as protected, can evolve. It is proof, Mr. President, that someone who sat in a cabinet while they chose to develop the Goat Islands and develop a coal plant in St. Elizabeth can learn and grow. Mr. President, one wonders if this newfound interest in the environment has prompted his discussion with his party president, Mark Golding, about his abstention in the vote in this chamber on the plastic ban in 2018. One wonders if that conversation has happened. But we are recruiting advocates for environmental sustainability, and we welcome Senator Bunting's newfound interest. We hope he will take guidance from Senator Fraser-Binns and avoid misspeak in the future. Mr. President, Jamaica's land and forest management is in a better place today than it was in 2015. I am proud to announce that our Forestry Department, working in collaboration with the Bureau of Standards of Jamaica, Senator Hill, and indeed with funding from the EU Budget Support Program, has secured for Jamaica a prestigious marker of sustainability. Jamaica now joins the ranks of a very few emerging economies to have standards backed by the International Forest Stewardship Council, which will allow greater access and increased prices for all forest products bearing this certification. This shows, Mr. President, that we can grow Jamaica sustainably. Absolutely. Mr. President, the Forestry Department has commenced work on the preparation of a bill to repeal and replace the 1996 Forest Act. The new law is intended to modernize the legislative framework governing the forestry sector. Promulgation of the new legislation is advanced, and in fact, we will ensure that the Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, will be able to table this in the other place during his budget debate, Mr. President. In recognition of the importance of mangrove forests in sequestering carbon and by extension, increasing the country's resilience to climate change, providing habitat for several coastal species, including fish and birds, shoreline protection, and a key source of livelihood for several Jamaicans, particularly those in the fishery sector, the National Mangrove and Swamp Forest Management Plan is now complete. It is the intention of the It is the intention of the Forestry Department in collaboration with key stakeholders, having developed this plan, to ensure that we bring it to life, as it will require several NGOs, community groups, etc., to make what is in the document a reality. Jamaica, for management purposes, is divided into 26 watershed management units. Not like the 15 parishes that, well, it's 40. Portmore, all right, we'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get there shortly. But Jamaica, for management purposes, is divided into 26 watershed management units. Well, she won her seat, so it's not a bad person to aspire to. But several of these WMUs are degraded or severely degraded due to the impacts of natural hazards, such as hurricanes and storms, climate change, and indeed land use change. The health of these ecosystems is extremely important in maintaining the quality and quantity of the island's water resources. In an effort to enhance the management of watersheds, the government pursued the development of a watersheds policy, tabling a green paper in last year, March. We have done significant consultation, and we expect to complete the white paper this calendar year. Mr. President, MEGJC will complete this policy. Once this policy has been finalized, the government will turn its attention to the updating of the Watersheds Protection Act, 1963, so it is well overdue. Mr. President, an initiative that has been discussed several times in this House is the National Tree Planting Initiative. The Forestry Department has planted or distributed and tracked some 2.8 million trees, representing 94% achievement of the target to date. Colleagues will remember that last year we had a severe drought. That is the only reason we had delays and didn't complete the 3 million tree target by the end of the year. However, we expect to complete and surpass that planting target by middle of 2024. Mr. President, so that would have been the map that I was trying to show earlier, and I'll come back to that in a second. The other major project assigned to the ministry, through the ministry to the Forestry Department, is that in recognizing the value and importance of trees in the Jamaican landscape and their critical role in urban spaces, the government continues to focus on the process of planting trees in these urban spaces, with a target of 30,000 trees to be planted for the financial year. To date, we have gotten to about 54%, again because of the drought. But 5 major urban planting centers were identified. One was the Caymanas interchange along the NROC leg of the highway, the SCJ lands and Heartlands in St. Catherine. Some 10,155 plants have been planted there. The Silent Hill district in Christiana, Manchester, the Bull Bay leg of the highway in St. Andrew, and indeed the Glenmuir Highway interchange, where we've done about 682 plants. I know the teams are out actually this week. Mr. President, planting is scheduled along the Highway 2000, Spanish Town to Vineyards toll road segment, and the Maypen to Williamsfield segment for Q4, numbering of approximately 13,000 plants that we have in the nursery currently. On average, what we've seen with these urban planting exercises, we've had a survival rate of about 80% of the plants. So we will keep at it and regreen our urban centers over time. In relation to restoration of critical ecosystems, Mr. President, NEPA is currently implementing a GOJ UNEP Global Environment Facility project entitled IWECO, or the Integrated Water, Land and Ecosystems Management in Caribbean Small Island Developing States, hence why we call it IWECO. This project has as one of its key deliverables the restoration of the Negril Great Morass. The importance of the Negril Great Morass cannot be overemphasized. Indeed, the morass is one of the largest natural coastline ecosystems in the Caribbean region and is the habitat for several internationally significant species and has a high level of endemism. Maintenance of the health of the island's waters and rivers related to ecosystems is another key issue that is a priority for the government. But I'd like to pause. I'm not working with me today. I will send colleagues a copy of the PowerPoint to facilitate. What I was going to show you is the architectural drawings and renderings for the restoration of the Royal Palm Reserve, which has several endemic species of palms and birds that you literally, endemic as it suggests, cannot find anywhere else. Now, there was a viewing station that was built, an experiential center of sorts built by Mr. Siaga. It is our intention to rebuild it. Thankfully, because of the funding of the GEF and through this UNEP project, we've been able to do the design work and the preparatory work. So we'll go through the investment progress to bring this project back to being a reality. We hope access to this facility will trigger the growth of new environmentalists, of a social conscience of many of our students who will no doubt venture to this location and visit it for field trips. We also expect to open it up to families who live in the Negril area as a critical green space, as well as make it available for those who visit our island.
Thank you. Minister's time for speaking is up.
The member's time for speaking has expired, and I ask that it be extended to allow him to complete his presentation.
Members have heard the motion. Those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Those against, the ayes have it. Continue.
So Mr. President, I will pass this page around just to give a general idea, but it does prove that we can grow Jamaica sustainably. Mr. President, in relation to the issue of pollution, another issue listed as, as one of the elements of the triple planetary crisis by UNEP, the government has been channeling its efforts into key areas, including wastewater management, air quality, solid waste management, including plastics and microplastics. In this regard, the government, through MEGJC, is currently pursuing amendments to several pieces of subsidiary legislation under the NRCA Act, namely the air quality regulations and the wastewater and sludge regulations. Additionally, the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation will be working with its agencies, including NEPA, in the promulgation of long outstanding environmental impact assessment regulations under the NRCA Act in fiscal year 24-25. The government acknowledges, Mr. President, the plastic problem and has taken tangible steps to reduce it. I wish to update the nation on several steps to be taken this calendar year. These include the development of a national policy on the environmental sound management of single-use plastic products to be done this coming fiscal year. The Most Honorable Prime Minister has also announced already, ahead of his budget debate, that he has directed that a program aimed at the separation of plastics and other recyclables in all ministries, departments, and agencies commence this fiscal year. We have also previously announced that we will be banning plastic lunch boxes and indeed personal care products with microplastic beads, and the target date for this ban is June 1st. Now, why June 1st? Because we have taken the lessons from the first round of the plastic ban as it relates to public education and need to give sufficient lead time. Mr. President, there are 2 points that Jamaica should further note as it relates to the fight against plastic pollution. Jamaica currently collects over 30% of the plastic bottles produced monthly. That's not a well-known fact. Mr. President, we commend the NSWMA and the recycling partners of Jamaica who have achieved this, up from 8% 3 years ago. But we're ambitious with our environmental targets. We're in a race against time to ensure we improve our waste management. And one of the ways to improve our waste management is to ensure we extract plastic waste from the waste stream. We will continue to work with stakeholders to determine the appropriate legislation necessary to achieve our goal. Our goal, Mr. President, and for the country to understand, is not less than 70% of all plastic being produced monthly to be collected and recycled for the benefit of Jamaica. Now, it should be noted, Mr. President, that Jamaica is actively participating in the negotiations for a legally binding instrument on plastic pollution. In essence, the Paris Agreement related to pollution, and specifically plastic. Now, we don't know where those negotiations will end up. We obviously have some insight as to where they are. But it is our intention in Jamaica to make sure that whenever that is agreed, we are ahead of targets and able to sign and ratify almost immediately once that is agreed. The efforts, Mr. President, and the fight to halt biodiversity loss and tame pollution will be underpinned this year, Mr. President, by significant increases in fines, both for breaches of the NRCA Act and the Wildlife Protection Act. The Most Honorable Prime Minister will deal with these in his budget contribution. Mr. President, the third pillar of the triple planetary crisis is climate change. Climate change is the greatest threat to Jamaica's pursuit of its ambitions. It could cause us failure to achieve our aspirations for prosperity, peace, and productivity, and disrupt our very way of life. This problem is not one of our own making. In fact, nationally, we contribute very little to the problem, but it is indeed ours to confront. Mr. President, Jamaica's policy approach sees us pursuing a suite of reforms to existing policies and new strategies to maintain climate action. Already complete, and colleagues should recall that in 2023, an updated climate change policy framework and a newly minted emissions policy framework were tabled in both houses. These policies document how Jamaica will approach this existential threat. In progress, however, Mr. President, the government, through the CCD and the PIOJ, is developing its national adaptation plan with funding from the GCF. We're adopting the disaster risk financing policy. The development and approval of our long-term emissions reduction, and indeed our climate resilience strategy, our long-term strategy, will help to improve this situation. We have also included climate considerations in the addition of projects to the public sector investment program. That is new regionally and something to be very proud of. We have also targeted development of climate change legislation and accompanying regulations by 2026. This will allow for adequate time for consultation and indeed the completion of the full policy framework to make sure that there's policy coherence with the legislation. But, Mr. President, we can't discuss climate change without discussing climate financing. To effectively respond to this growing demand of needs, the government of Jamaica is working with international financial institutions and donors to strengthen cooperation, crowd in private investment, and build climate resilience. By receiving access, as announced by the Minister of Finance, to US $764 million Resilience and Sustainability Facility arrangement approved by the IMF's Executive Board, Jamaica is able to do exactly that. And, you know, it's not understood widely, Mr. President. Jamaica is one of only 2 countries in the hemisphere that would qualify for this fund. And it is, to the best of my research, I'm prepared to be corrected if someone can find otherwise, the largest resilience fund allocation to a developing nation for climate finance anywhere. Mr. President, this facility will focus on a project preparation facility and with the aim of developing a pipeline of resilient climate-smart PPPs to generate a robust pipeline of bankable projects while reducing the financing burden on the public sector. It starts with identifying systemic climate risks and climate hotspots through the Jamaica systemic risk assessment tool, which colleagues should recall in my last State of the Nation, I went at length to show how that works. In essence, it takes thousands of data points and ranks climate risk, so we're able to invest in line with the risks that we face in strengthening our infrastructure. This project was done by the CCRI with the support of the Oxford University and indeed funding from the UK and the GCF. We will also this year, Mr. President, as been announced, launch a green financing facility that will be developed to support the identification and financing of climate projects with the GOJ, the GCF, and the EIB taking the lead on the financing. The facility will trial a country-led approach to simplifying and scaling up international finance provisions in line with recommendations of the task force on the access to climate finance, and additionally mobilize the £7 million of financing to be made available through the UK for this initiative. Now, how is this different, for instance, with other announcements about green-blue banks from several other developing nations? Well, we will embed this within our development bank as it is accredited by the GCF. Developing new institutions as opposed to strengthening existing ones is not always the best when it sends up the cost and reduces funds actually getting to the ground. So we expect to get to market with these financial projects for climate-smart projects long before others in the space. The government of Jamaica, through collaborations with key stakeholders such as the PIOJ, the CCD, recently announced and developed a climate finance strategic framework for the period 2024 to 2027 to better direct external development assistance resources and to ensure Jamaica can mitigate and adapt to the effects of climate change and, by extension, meet its national and international climate goals. Mr. President, the framework outlines Jamaica's climate commitments, identifying implementation gaps and challenges, and suggesting future strategic directions. The CFSF, as it is called, is anticipated to assist international development partners in aligning their programming portfolios and ensuring that there's better budget support to Jamaica. The approval, Mr. President, recently of the Green Climate Fund to accredit the Development Bank of Jamaica and indeed JCIF allows Jamaica, through these accreditations, to exercise ownership of climate change funding and better integrate these funds with its National Climate Change Action Plan. It also allows Jamaica to access funding at a concessional interest rate to implement projects and programs of varying sizes, which are geared towards climate change resilience. Mr. President, other key projects the Senate should note include yesterday's groundbreaking ceremony of the Portmore Resilience Park. Congratulations, Senator. Led by the UDC, this is a project in excess of $3 billion and demonstrates what climate action looks like. In partnership with the UN FAO, the government of Jamaica is undertaking the Adapt Jamaica project, aimed at enhancing climate change resilience of vulnerable smallholders in central Jamaica. Mr. President, this is a critical project to ensure we have food security in Jamaica. But that could take an hour to present, so I will do a ministerial statement on it and save you this morning. Mr. President, with MSET, we will introduce this year 100 new buses which will be fueled by natural gas, significantly cutting our emissions from heavy fuel oil, Mr. President. Again, climate action being seen. Mr. President, Jamaica will be updating its NDCs, its nationally determined contributions, by 2025, and that will mean there will be a significant process of consultation this year. NDCs represent a short to medium-term target that include your mitigation action in terms, meaning for those who are watching, very simply, how will you cut your emissions to ensure that you honor your moral obligations to reduce the impacts of climate change? In Jamaica, Jamaica was the 11th country to file its NDCs in the last round with the UN. We expect to be in the same queue this time around. And last time we would have dealt with land use as one of the tools that we would use to fight climate change. And I'm happy to report that we will have more ambitious commitments, when achievable commitments, in our NDCs. The public doesn't understand what 1.5 means, because it's framed as the route to salvation for the climate change issue. But what 1.5 degrees temperature warming means, colleagues, is actually the equal sharing of misery. Last year, we all know the drought we had, and anyone who lives in coastal communities can tell you about beach erosion. We can see saltwater intrusion in our wells. Those who are in farming can tell you about deteriorating soil quality and reducing pollination rates. Climate change is real in Jamaica. It affects our economic prospects. So even if you want to be a climate denier, it is affecting your pocket, whether you like it or not. 1.5 isn't a good thing. But Jamaica cannot and should never represent in the international community with hollow words. It is why our mitigation plan and our plan to decarbonize through our energy transition and through the greening and electrifying of our fleet is so absolutely critical that when we demand the changes from our larger neighbors and our larger friends in the G7 and G20, that we stand on a morally sound position. Water, Mr. President. Building a resilient Jamaica requires access to potable and irrigation water. The government, through the MEGJC and its water agencies, is unrelenting in its quest to increase the water distribution footprint by 2030, with the overarching goal of achieving universal coverage. SDG 6, access to potable water and sanitation for all. The Vision 2030 plan clearly outlines Jamaica's position on potable water supply and sanitation for all Jamaicans. This is not a point where there is political divergence. The National Water Commission, the Water Resources Authority, the Rural Water Supply Limited, the Central Wastewater Treatment Limited, and which all feed into the Integrated Water Resource Management Council, are under the purview of MEGJC. As with all subject areas, no one subject area is the purview of one singular ministry. However, the subject area and the achievement of our targets under SDG 6 and indeed Vision 2030 are the responsibility of MEGJ. Mr. President, last year the country faced and navigated the worst drought on record. And I would have made, I think, at least 2 ministerial statements here. So colleagues should recall that from October 2022 to March 2023, Mr. President, it was cumulatively the driest period in Jamaica's history. So if one recalls, in February, for instance, in Kingston and St. Andrew, Kingston received 8% of its 30-year average in rainfall. Not 8 below, but 8%. Portland was 18, St. Mary was 17. So that gives you an idea of the severity that we faced earlier last year. Wet parishes. The weather patterns have largely shifted, where the rainy parishes are now the northwest of the island and not the northeast. That's part of the climate change. It's something we're going to have to deal with and confront. But despite facing the worst drought, despite seeing Jamaica break temperature records in July, despite seeing us then again break temperature records in August, despite tying temperature records in September, and I don't know what the January numbers will say, but certainly anecdotally it seems we're on path to pass some temperature records, or at least get close to some this January. Despite these things, the government performed creditably in its drought response. Colleagues will recall that in financial year 2022 to 23, 200,000 Jamaicans island-wide benefited from capital investment projects totaling some 4 billion Jamaican dollars, Mr. President. And we got the benefit of those projects with significantly reduced leaks, and that is why we were able to get through the worst drought in our history. Though we're not yet at the stage, Senator Hill, to have audited financials from 2023, we know that we deployed capital projects last year faster than ever before again. Mr. President, we know in the coming budget year, this government will deploy in excess, just through the National Water Commission, not on major national, as the Prime Minister likes to call, nation-building projects, just through the National Water Commission in its capital works program, in excess of 7 billion Jamaican dollars, Mr. President. Mr. President, 75% of households are connected to NWC, 15% are connected through municipal systems, and just under 10% get water from non-government sources. Colleagues, that's not good enough. That's not where we should be in 2024. This policy, which was an update of a previous national water sector policy, has helped us to get there, and we're proud of the fact that we've made up significant ground over the last 20 years. But knowing my colleagues, I know none of us believe that 75% of households connected to NWC is good enough. None of us believe that the 10% which aren't connected to municipal systems is good enough. Now, how we approach the discussions on the water sector policy is going to require some political maturity, and I think should be looked at outside of the lens or proximity to either a local or a general election. So we will work on our green papers and position papers so that we can have non-political, level-headed debates because there are financial implications. But I want to assure the country, especially those living outside of the footprint of the Water Commission or the municipal small water systems, that we don't think is good enough. We are working on financial products and the policy products that will ensure we meet our obligations, not just to the UN with SDG 6, but to you, our citizens, because you deserve the access to the potable water. Mr. President, the WRA, an agency under MEGJEC, is legally mandated to regulate, allocate, conserve, and otherwise manage the water resources of Jamaica. It's expected that when this is done, it spurs growth, social transformation, through sustainable utilization of water resources. It's why, Mr. President, fresh off the press again this morning, I'm happy to highlight the National Water Resources Master Plan, gazetted just this morning. The master plan is available as a consultative tool for as a resource for policymakers, water managers, abstractors, and all other stakeholders in the water sector. So, President, government has been hard at work turning on the pipes when the camera is there, when the camera is not there. Mr. President, I'm very sad I won't be able to show you the map because the projector has given up. But, Mr. President, we have turned on water across the length and breadth of Jamaica over the last 5 years. And because it's important to the records of the Parliament, I'm going to read through them. Because the people in these communities who have had their lives transformed should be acknowledged in the records of the Parliament. The Sandside Storage Tank Replacement Project in St. Mary, a place I know my colleague and friend holds dear, received a 100,000 US gallon tank at a cost of $22 million, serving an approximately 120 accounts, 500 persons benefiting in Sandside and Trinity Heights. I know there are some Clarendonians here. So the Mitchelltown Pipeline Replacement Project for $25 million served the Mitchelltown Housing Scheme, Newtown Phases 1, Lioneltown, and Rocky Point. Now, there were some old pipes in the space, but they weren't getting any water. They were severely degraded. So we're happy to have replaced this system. And these are the small ones. That's when we come to the big ones, but we're taking our time. The pipeline upgrading the works from Stirling Castle and Padmore in rural St. Andrew was an upgrade of the 1-inch line that was totally inadequate to a 4-inch line supply at a cost of $35 million, providing regular water supply to some 900 persons that didn't have it. Now, one of our larger investments, for those who live in Trelawney, I know Senator Webber may as well live there, depending on how you look at the weekends, right? We upgraded at a cost of $100 million the intake. Now, what the intake is a filtration system that pulls water from our rivers. Now, most of those are analog and very outdated. We put $100 million into it so that every single time the rain falls, you don't hear the issue of turbidity. We've put in a digital filter system that allows water to flow. This has benefited in excess, Mr. President, of 20,000 Jamaicans in Trelawney, St. James, and St. Anne, and will facilitate new projects by way of housing, retail space, and indeed hotels. The Duck and Field storage tank in St. Thomas, Mr. President. You know we've been making a lot of investments in St. Thomas, benefiting some 4,500 people with that 50,000 gallon tank, $20 million. The Yorktown storage tank replacement project, about $22 million, dealing with Howell's content, Bullard's content, Hopewell, Parnassus, Denby Drive, Fogar Road, 4-part settlement in Clarendon. In St. Anne, we replaced the Liberty tank placement, Liberty tank on the boundary of northwest and northeast St. Ann with a 50,000 gallon tank supporting 616 households. In St. We have all day though, it's only me on the agenda. The Maca Hill water supply system in St. Mary again, $31.5 million, helping the people in Highgate, Senator Morris. In Clarendon, 3 water projects were completed for distribution across the southern belt at over $212 million. They included the Portland Cottage supply system, 5,000 residents, $117 million. They include the Salt River water supply scheme at a cost of $34 million, 2,500 residents. They include the mineral tank system, as mentioned earlier. Now, I'm sorry you won't be able to see it, but I certainly will circulate. This is the map of completed projects thus far in the financial year. Now, the ones in yellow with the star are the ones I was able to tour by time-wise. The ones in green represent the other capital works projects that we haven't physically had a chance to commission. And you'd be surprised, it's not the members of parliament or the councillors that call you first. You get the calls at the office from the residents and say, oh, so you can't come take a picture, turn on my pipe too. It's very interesting, even sometimes before the political representatives, regardless of which side are able to call you. The residents see when they do the pressure testing and and the water coming through, and they start to call the office regardless of which community they're from and say, come acknowledge that we now have our water. It's a very interesting experience, Mr. President. So I'm passing this around when I last as it goes on both sides of the aisle. It shows a map of projects. But more importantly, and we have our budget cycles, so you don't start procurement without having the money in place when the new budget starts, which is why so many projects finish in the second half of the year. Mr. President, this is the map of the projects that are underway. You'll notice that it doubles the projects which are completed for the year. So between now, certainly March, latest June, projects underway. Absolutely. Now, I'll pass this around in a little bit. The work is underway in Kingston and St. Andrew for $770 million of projects. They include sewer expansions for $320 million in Mona, an area which has seen their water table severely polluted because of when that scheme was built, in the same problem we're having in Portmore, same problem you're having in certain communities in Clarendon because of the backyard pits. So we're also, to protect our water supply, we're also in a race against time to ensure that sewage coverage is significantly expanded. The President, one that I know the Prime Minister is particularly proud of is the line to Port Royal, because ultimately we know that it's not just the size of the community, but we know that the persons that have lived there all of their lives deserve the opportunity to realize the awesome economic possibilities of their homes. So we have invested, Mr. President, some $430 million into the community of Port Royal so that the citizens there have reliable potable water, have access to sewage, and there is commercial opportunity in the space. Some 2,000 people have benefited already, but we certainly expect with the commercial investments that will come, their benefit will grow, and others from downtown Kingston and indeed Harborview will benefit. So, President, there are major projects which we've just completed the procurement of, and we're proud of. Essex Hall in St. Andrew. Now that is, for those of us who know Councillor John Myers or who have never met him, he's the most consistent caller on all radio programs in Jamaica, regardless of who is in government. He has been calling for this across governments for as long as I can recall. That is in West Rural St. Andrew. That project, procurement is complete. That project will break ground very soon. Now, Black River to Treasure Beach, project nearly complete. The Hounslow water supply in St. Elizabeth, Senator Hill. The Dornock water supply in Trelawney. The Jericho well to Yuatan transmission line in St. Catherine. The Juno Crescent line in Clarendon. The Jordan well where the works are ongoing in St. Mary, Senator Morris. the Mount Royal Booster Station, the Morant Bay to Springwell Station in St. Thomas, the Minards Well to Brownstown Pipeline, and you recall the issues with this one, Senator Hill, when you were there with the water. There were issues with the procurement. We had to go back to tender, so we lost a year, but we're not going to breach the processes. We're at the stage where we're ready to break ground now. Now, this will benefit some 25,000 people from Brownstown heading south. We're very happy about that. We will break ground on some of the work and the preparatory work for the Rock River Water Supply and Mini Dam in Clarendon. We will break ground shortly for the Savannah-Lamar major water supply mains changing. We will be doing the bypass pipeline in St. Elizabeth. The Wakefield and Bunkers Hill water supply in Trelawney procurement is done and work ready to start. The Western Spanish Town to Johns Road in St. Catherine work is ready to start. Now, those projects that have gone to procurement and are complete and are just started represent some $2.5 billion of work that is in varying stages of deployment. So, President, we are turning on the pipes. We're building a sustainable Jamaica. But we have programs that started some years ago. We have programs to come. Some colleagues should recall that we also imported $7 billion of pipes to facilitate our major waterworks, which are underway now. These pipes will help us to complete the Greater Mandeville Water Supply Improvement Project, which, you know, you can't have a name of a project that's 2-3 sentences. So sometimes you say Greater Mandeville and people don't realize that, for instance, a community like Pepper, which was right beside the major well in the country, the largest well in the country, didn't have potable water for decades. Now I'm happy that I'm going with MP slowly to go commission that system in 2 weeks as it is complete, Mr. President. Kingsland to Greenvale. Mentioned the Minard Well, the Whitehall Water Supply Project in St. Thomas, the Stanton Terrace Maresca Road Pipeline Project, which is a very old pipeline, and Kingston and St. Andrew is at risk. It can go at any time in the same way. We have the issue with the main into St. James. So those two are your most important pipelines that are at risk, which we'll address in the coming fiscal year. The Marmy Bay to St. Anne's Bay line, for those who travel that corridor, that project is 3 years old. The pipes are now here. You'll see them on the side of the road. The Arakabessa Hamilton Mountain project in St. Mary, Mr. President. The pipes are here to facilitate these works starting, well, they've started many of them, and will continue through the next 2 financial years as we deploy capital. Absolutely. There was COVID disruption because some of these were ordered in 2021. Significant issues. In fact, it affected all of our neighbors, so I know you had conversations even about us having to amalgamate pipe orders, because even with this large order, Jamaica is so small, it is very difficult to book yourself in the production line for pipes. $7 billion is a lot to us, but it's not a lot in the global supply chain. The next major one, Mr. President, and this project is one that I think warrants some academic study. But I'm happy to report that on February 16th, work, not groundbreaking, work will start on the Rio Cobre Content Water Treatment Plant. This project, Mr. President, represents some $77 million deployed. Now, what does this mean for the people of Kingston St. Andrew, the soon-to-be parish of Portmore, the parish of St. Catherine? In the worst drought in the country's history, last year we were short 12.5 million gallons of water daily. This is 15.5 million gallons that will go into the distribution network. Now, that gives you a little space. Now, we're doing some pipeline work in Kingston and St. Andrews, so we intend to cut further the leaks that we've already cut. But beyond that, we will also commission the Maresca Road well, which was rested for some 20 years. The quality of the water has been tested. We're back to where we want to be. That will add an additional 2 million gallons that can deal with KPH all the way to Vineyard Town without disruption, especially in times of drought. This is the basis of future development growth in St. Catherine, Kingston and St. Andrew, and the future parish of Portmore. Mr. President, Well,
we have it in the pipeline. Don't worry.
You know, Mr. President, I think that opening that door isn't necessarily in the interest of the discussion, because colleagues should recall that when the Washington Boulevard was widened under then PNP administration, pipes were laid. Those pipes, they weren't reserve pipes. Those pipes were supposed to deal with issues that would have supplied the entire Red Hills, Dunrabin, come down, basically. Oh, Mr. President, because sometimes we assume that everyone follows current affairs, the public may not be aware. After spending hundreds of millions of dollars to lay these pipes, Mr. President, the then administration did not connect them. Mr. President, we have found schemes built under Operation Pride all across the country that had pipes laid and were never connected to the Water Commission, Mr. President. Mr. President, there are schemes where work was signed off on, developed in Portmore, where the wrong types of pipes were laid and somebody signed them off. And then we wonder why you have pipe issues. Mr. President, the first brief I received from the Water Commission when I was assigned the portfolio responsibility, admittedly, I felt overwhelmed. Because when you saw the scale of the issues from decades of mismanagement, it was overwhelming to contemplate that you were going to be the one facing the public trying to explain that it wasn't us. But we haven't done it that way. We have said to the public, the problems exist, but we're going to fix them by 2030, Mr. President. Mr. President, distribution, which is what I've just focused on, has been the bane of the Water Commission's existence. Yes. Many of our parishes have non-revenue water in excess of 70%. Non-revenue water, Mr. President, means that pipes, that water either leaks or is stolen, 70% of it in terms of what is collected and what is distributed. 70%, Mr. President. No business could stay open. With the project that has been done in Kingston and St. Andrew, we've cut those leaks from 71% to 37%. In Portmore, we've cut the leaks down to 40%, Mr. President. In doing so, we've also saved significant money on our energy costs because we're no longer paying to pump water into the ground, Mr. President. Now, the residents of Portmore can take comfort. The residents of Clarendon can take comfort because we've gone to tender on the non-revenue water program for the entire country to seek a partner for 10 years of distribution upgrades that will bring us within the range of New York City in 10 years of 20% non-revenue water, Mr. President. Mr. President, in addition to the 45 megawatt floating solar plant, which will start also in February, the pilot is complete. They will start in February once. This year. Next month. Oh, time is flying. Time is flying. No, the pilot has gone very well. The pilot has gone very well. In addition to that, Mr. President, that $68 million project that will put floating solar panels over 80% of the surface of the Mona Reservoir. And colleagues should recall, this project will provide $1 billion Jamaican dollars of benefit to the National Water Commission annually. Now, how will it do that? Reduced evaporation because you're providing shade. Increased capacity because you have to dredge to anchor it. And Mr. President, once the OUR has completed its work, which we expect soon, wheeling license to ensure that 45 megawatts is wheeled to the grid and significantly reducing our energy costs at the National Water Commission. Indeed. Mr. President, but we didn't stop there because ultimately we have some pumps that are older than I am in the network. So this year we will spend some $900 million in starting the process to remove the oldest pumps and most unreliable pumps first. Now, this will significantly reduce our energy cost and will also increase reliability significantly to ensure that residents have way less downtime in their water systems, Mr. President. Mr. President, when you discuss the financial performance of the Water Commission, it's a touchy issue because many residents say, well, that doesn't help me. I'm not connected to the Water Commission, or I have an unreliable water supply. And in the course, Senator Gale and Senator Brown, the workers would also say that hasn't benefited them, certainly before the reclassification exercise. But turning around the Water Commission's financial performance was absolutely critical. It was absolutely critical. We moved from a net loss, Senator Webby, of $2.13 billion in 2021 to a net gain of $2.7 billion in 22-23, and are trending towards, Mr. President, a financial surplus of close to 4 billion Jamaican dollars. Now, why does that matter, Mr. President? It matters so that I can list the projects we just listed. It matters so that Jamaicans can move from unreliable water supply to reliable water supply. It matters so that the men and women who work very hard at the Water Commission can benefit from the salaries they should receive, Mr. President. This has allowed us to increase the fleet of the Water Commission, also increasing the efficiency of the Water Commission. So we've acquired some 30 new vans, Mr. President, that help response time when there are line breakages, which are inevitably wherever you live in the world. We have, however, also added last year 8 new water trucks to ensure our emergency response is better. And we are in procurement for a further 8 trucks. And next year we'll buy a further 8 trucks, not because trucking is the efficient way to distribute water, but because our network is old and there will be line breakages and we must be able to respond, and we cannot solely depend on private operators who can charge us particular rates that we can't manage. Mr. President, drought is an interesting concept because the Met Service geographic official designation or definition of drought is based just solely on rainfall over a period of time. The Water Commission's definition of drought is what's in their storage. The household definition of drought is whether or not you simply turn on your pipe and get water in the Jamaican context. It is why, Mr. President, in March of last year, the Prime Minister announced the development and commencement of a rural water resilience project to distribute some 50,000 black tanks to those most at need, Mr. President. Now, with all projects, a pilot phase is important. It is why we designed a pilot phase looking at the rainfall data of the worst drought that we've ever had, which showed the impact on eastern Jamaica in particular. Very haphazard, actually, because it didn't show it in St. Catherine and particular points, even though St. Mary had particular rainfall challenges. It showed it in the hills of Clarendon and the hills of St. Anne, but really going back east. We designed a project to give 214 tanks each to the 14 worst affected constituencies by rain. Now, we put in place the social review component, where names are recommended by members of parliament, but the social review team goes and ensures, A, it is a household in need, because it doesn't have a tank. It is a household that is having particular financial challenges, and we provide a 450-gallon tank. We build a base. We connect them to Water Commission if they're in the space. If not, we install rainwater harvesting, Mr. President. And importantly, we also map the location of these, not just for an audit perspective, but we map it to ensure that we start to remove the gray area from trucking that has bedeviled this country. And you always hear them stop at this yard because it's political reasons, etc. We will now be able to measure where trucks go as we start the mapping process of our secondary domestic storage of water in this country, Mr. President. And we expect to move from 3,000 at the end of the pilot phase to 10,000 and into island-wide rollout of this project, Mr. President. But, so some of them here already. There's actually a mission coming next week. So, but those aren't the ones that give me the biggest joy. The large-scale, big projects, even though you know they transform the economy. There's nothing that gives you more joy than when you go, especially with the Rural Water Supply Limited, to the small systems. Well, wherever we do go in the country. But this year we have deployed some $446 million, Mr. President, into small projects that have benefited 20,000 Jamaicans, Mr. President. They include the Watermount Water Supply and Penn Lucky Valley in St. Catherine, the Chambers Penn Water Supply in Hanover, the Mango Valley Project in St. Mary, the Portland Cottage Small System in Rocky Point, the Gravesend Catchment Tank Rehabilitation in Northern Trelawney, Mr. President, amongst others. The agency is also finalizing work on Bangor Ridge, Stony Hill, Cornwall Barracks in Portland, Pear Tree Grove in St. Catherine, Maybole in St. Elizabeth, and Thickets in St. Anne to benefit an additional 5,000 residents at a total cost for those projects at $135 million. So, President, we are working on the New Eden system in Portland and minor water systems throughout Central and Southeast St. Mary. So, President, 1,000 persons. Yes. Work will also commence this year in Lower River in Trelawney, Mother Floor in Manchester, Bunkers Hill in Clarendon, Free Hill in St. Anne, Lapland in St. James, Cheswick in St. Thomas. These projects combined will benefit an additional 7,000 residents, Mr. President. The agency continues to provide rainwater harvesting systems for rural schools, Mr. President. Among my most fulfilling moments this fiscal year was the commissioning of the water system at the Albert Town High School in Trelawney, which was constructed at $4.75 million, but put in place reliable water storage and rainwater harvesting for 742 students, for 9 administrative staff, for 54 teachers, and 14 ancillary workers, and you could see the joy of having that system. Mr. President, on water I could speak till 4. I could revisit climate change and keep us here till midnight. And on environmental regulation that the ministry is working on, we could stay till 4 a.m. But Mr. President, we are growing Jamaica sustainably. We are growing Jamaica sustainably as we seek peace, productivity, and prosperity. It is not an easy feat and could easily, as we said, be discussed all day. However, I hope that I've provided suitable updates. Sorry? Donna is a lovely lady. However, I hope that I have provided suitable updates to MEGJEC progress and contributing to us achieving same. Mr. President, Project Jamaica deserves more of this, and I look forward to the Prime Minister updating you on this and so much more in the budget debate. Mr. President, I thank you for the opportunity to contribute.
Thank you very much, Senator Samuda. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, before I ask for the suspension of the State of the Nation debate and move for the motion of adjournment, just allow me to commend Senator the Honorable Matthew Samuda for his tour de force, but not just for the presentation that he has just made. Not only, Mr. President, for the presentation that he has made, but for indeed the thousands of lives, the thousands of families, households, individuals across Jamaica who have been directly impacted by his leadership and the team which supports him at the ministry responsible for water.
Thank you.
Mr. President, it was a joy to listen to it. I'm sure both sides, who are all filled with the joy that these communities have experienced, and I know their hearts, their hearts are full. And that they share in the positive aspects of delivery for the people of Jamaica, because that's the business that we're about. So with that, Mr. President, I wish to ask for the Senate to be adjourned for a date to be fixed.
After, just the question is that the State of the Nation debate be suspended for a date to be fixed. Those in favor? Thank you. The question is that the Senate be adjourned for a date to be fixed. Those in favor? This Honorable Senate now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed.